G'day, I'm Guy Allen and welcome to Motorcycle TV. What we're playing with today is this fella here, second generation Suzuki Hayabusa. Now second generation actually came out in 2008, so why are we playing with this now? Well, there's been one big difference with this bike. In fact, they fixed probably the only substantial grizzle I ever had about it, which is they've added anti-lock braking. Great safety measure, just a really good net to have in case you screw it up. Okay, so what's a second generation Busa? Well, if you're not in the know, the first bike came out in 1999. This one was a substantial upgrade. They had a go at the cosmetics or reformed the cosmetics. They also played with the suspension and a lot of substantial changes with the engine. For example, it went up to 1340cc and ran higher compression at 12.5 to 1. The upshot of all that was, it's not as though the previous bike was limp-wristed. I mean, that was a 300 km/h motorcycle. This one claims an extra 10 horsepower or more. In fact, you're claiming around 190 odd horses. They also, as I mentioned, played with the suspension and upgraded the brakes. They went from 6-piston to 4-piston. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but believe it or not, the 4 pistons have a much better feel to them. The suspension, they essentially refined it, so it's just a nicer handling package than the first generation. I actually own a first generation bike, so I've got a bit of an idea of how the two respond with each other. What's to like about this bike? Well, it's not a huge motorcycle for a big, powerful sports tourer. Physically, it's relatively compact. Seat height is about 800mm or just above. It actually feels a bit lower than that because it's got a nice slim profile where you put your legs to the ground. It's very controllable, it's very docile if you want it to be. Sure, it's still a 300 km/h motorcycle, but it will do exactly what you tell it to. It's not particularly threatening to ride. When you ramp it up, of course, you need to know exactly what you're doing. Downsides to it, I really can't see any. These things have become something of a cult bike. The price has stayed the same as the first one, so it's $19,290 plus on road costs. Not hugely cheap perhaps, but you're getting a lot of performance for the dollar. You're also getting very thorough instrumentation. I like the fact that it's got little niceties such as a digital indicator or gear indicator in the dashboard, in amongst all the analog gauges and so on. Who'd buy this bike? Look, if you like a bike with a little bit of character, that's got plenty of performance, that's a known, pretty well bulletproof package, then this is something you should look at. It will accept a pillion. It's a comfortable distance bike for a single person. It's a medium distance bike realistically for two people. Let's have a little chat about the handling. You've got full suspension adjustment at both ends on this bike. Now the old joke is if you've got 45 adjustments, that gives you 44 ways to get it wrong. But there's some actually good suspension setup guides out there, and it's worth having a look at them and seeing what you need to do. It's not actually rocket science, and once you find the happy medium, you'll find this bike, it's a 260 kilo motorcycle rolling, but it's reasonably light in the steering. It's got what I'd describe as a medium tip-in. It's not sports bike quick. The suspension gives you plenty of options for different setups, for different weights and so on. So I really would leave the suspension alone and just go for a sensible setup on it. Okay, braking. We've got radially mounted 4-spotter Brembos on the front. They're almost universal on performance motorcycles at the moment. There's a lot of brands using them, and with good reason. Ton of power, very good feel. There's really no complaint about those front brakes at all. And the fact you've got ABS now, for me, is just icing on the cake. It gives you a lot more reassurance when the conditions are a bit dodgy or you're really having to pull the thing up in a hurry. I know saying 190 odd horsepower motorcycle being practical is ludicrous, but there are a couple of little touches here and there. You've got things like these little luggage strap hooks to strap something to the bike, obviously. What I do like is it's actually got a decent fuel range, and that's probably the biggest thing for me. 21 litre tank. Now that actually gives you a very substantial range because it generally uses fuel at about 16 kilometres per litre. Okay, let's talk rubber. What's holding it to the road is a set of Bridgestone Battle Axes. They're very, very good tyre for this style of motorcycle. It's particularly important for a bike like this that you have a good matched set that suits the motorcycle. Frankly, if I was going to replace these tyres, I'd probably put exactly the same thing on again. They work surprisingly well in the wet. I did actually have a wet ride on this a few days ago, and they're very predictable. In the dry, they're fantastic. They really grip. Okay, so what do we actually get in the tin? For $19,290 you get this dirty great thing, which is very fast, very predictable, very easy to live with. Really, I've got no complaints about it. The Hayabusa name might have been around for a while and this generation hasn't changed greatly other than the addition of ABS. For me, that's really wrapped it up as a very, very good package. Don't forget to look for a full test of the bike in Motorcycle Trader magazine.